Welcome back to the Mind Game, where we unpack the psychology behind what people do in relationships and why it works. I'm Dave King, and today we're talking about something that can feel small on the surface, but hits like a truck in real life: silence. The kind of silence that shows up after a disagreement or out of nowhere, and suddenly you're staring at your phone like it's going to explain your life to you. With me is Dr. Wania Prince, psychologist and relationship researcher with more than 2 decades in the field. Dr. Prince, glad to have you.
Thanks, Dave. This is one of those topics people deal with privately, but it affects an incredible number of couples. So I'm happy we're putting words to it.
Let's start at the beginning. A lot of listeners would say, maybe she just needed space. So here's the question: is silence ever just peace?
Sometimes it is, but in a relationship it's surprisingly rare that silence is neutral. More often, silence is communication with the volume turned down. It's a message. Let's say a couple has a small argument, nothing huge. And then one person just disappears emotionally. No explanation, no clarity, no repair attempt. The other person starts spiraling. They replay the conversation, they overanalyze their tone, they try to guess what went wrong. And right there, the power dynamic shifts. The person doing the silent treatment doesn't have to argue, doesn't have to defend their position, doesn't have to negotiate. They simply control the emotional temperature in the room by withholding connection.
So instead of using words, the silence becomes the whole point. It pushes the other person into chasing.
Exactly. It silently says, "Come find me. Come fix this. Come earn your way back into comfort." And if you don't recognize the pattern, you'll spend a lot of energy trying to solve a problem that the other person is deliberately keeping unclear.
Okay, you've named a few different types of this. Let's break them down. You talk about something called punishment silence. What is it?
Punishment silence is the classic one people recognize once they've lived through it. It usually follows conflict, and it's designed to create guilt, anxiety, and self-doubt in the other partner. The idea is simple: you did something I didn't like, so I'm going to remove warmth and communication until you feel bad enough. Picture a guy who makes a normal choice, like spending an evening with his friends instead of going to an extended family dinner. He might even apologize for the inconvenience, thinking it's settled. But the next day? No a good morning, short replies, cold energy, like he's being put on trial without being told the charges.
And that's where he starts paying the fine.
Right. He starts apologizing over and over. He starts trying to prove he's a good partner. And what's happening underneath is conditioning. The message becomes, if you prioritize yourself, this is what you get. The silent treatment is the punishment, and his frantic attempts to repair it become the reward.
That part is wild to me, because he's not even apologizing because he believes he's wrong. He's apologizing because he can't stand the tension.
That distinction matters. An apology that comes from genuine reflection is healthy. An apology that comes from panic is submission. And once silence reliably produces submission, it turns into a tool that gets used again and again.
Alright, so punishment silence is reactive. Something happened, and the silence is the response. But you also talk about test silence, and that sounds different.
It is different. Test silence isn't necessarily triggered by something you did. It's more like an experiment. It's withdrawal used to measure how you react. How quickly you chase. How quickly you destabilize. How much you'll abandon your center to regain access to her attention. Early in relationships, this can show up as a sudden coldness with no clear reason. And then the man starts sending multiple messages, asking what's wrong, trying to fix it immediately, getting visibly anxious.
And she's watching like, okay, so this works.
She's collecting data. And look, not everyone is doing this consciously like a villain. Sometimes it's learned behavior. Sometimes it's insecurity. But the effect is the same. She learns whether silence can move you like a joystick.
So how does someone pass that test? Or maybe not fail it, is the better way to say it.
By not abandoning yourself. By staying calm. If you've reached out once in a normal, respectful way and there's no response, you don't spiral. You don't flood the situation with emotion. You continue your day. Gym, work, friends, sleep. You don't punish her back, you don't play games, you just don't chase. And here's the paradox: composure often increases attraction. Anxiety reads as dependency. Calm reads as stability and self-worth. When you keep your peace, you send the message that connection is important, but not at the cost of your dignity.
So the test is basically asking, can I shut down your whole world by going quiet?
That's a blunt way to put it, but yes. And your response teaches her what's possible in the relationship.
Now we've got to talk about the one you call comparison silence. You've said it's the most dangerous. What does that mean?
Comparison silence is when the distance isn't about conflict and it isn't about testing your nervous system. It's about scanning the horizon. The person becomes quiet with you because they're emotionally allocating energy elsewhere. They're evaluating options, comparing attention, comparing benefits, asking themselves, is there a better deal out there? The partner on the receiving end often senses it: slower replies, less warmth, distracted conversations. And the most common response is to try harder. More dates, more gifts, more reassurance, more effort.
Which sounds logical. Like, let me show you I care.
It sounds logical, but in that scenario it can backfire. Because if someone is already halfway out the door, desperation doesn't inspire loyalty. It can communicate low self-worth. And if she's comparing, your increased pursuit might actually confirm to her that she has the leverage.
So the rough truth is, you can't outperform your way into being chosen if someone is quietly auditioning replacements.
Exactly. And that's painful, but it's clarifying. The healthiest move is to stay grounded, keep your standards, and watch reality. If she comes back willing to communicate and recommit, that tells you something. If she fades out, that tells you something too. Either way, you're no longer spending your life trying to win against a game you didn't agree to play.
Let's get into why silence messes with men so much. Because listeners will say, I know I shouldn't care this much, but I do. Is there an actual psychological reason it hits that hard?
Yes. Many men are wired to solve problems. Not in the stereotype way, but cognitively: clarity, closure, resolution. When communication shuts down, the brain treats it like an unfinished task. Loose ends create mental static. Think of it like trying to complete a puzzle and one key piece is missing, but the person holding it refuses to tell you where it is. Your mind keeps looping. What did I do? What does she want? How do I fix it? That repetitive loop is rumination. And it burns energy.
So while she's conserving energy by saying nothing, he's spending energy trying to decode the silence.
Yes, and that imbalance creates leverage. The longer it goes on, the more destabilized he can become. And once someone is destabilized, they're more likely to bargain, apologize excessively, and compromise values just to get relief.
Alright, let's land this with the practical part. What do most men do wrong when they get hit with silence? And what should they do instead?
The big mistake is panic. Panic creates overtexting, long emotional paragraphs, repeated apologies, canceling plans, begging for answers. And I get it, it feels urgent. Silence can feel like abandonment, like the relationship is slipping through your fingers. But when you respond with panic, you teach a lesson: this tactic works on me. If she goes quiet and you immediately surrender your boundaries, you've just proven silence is an on-demand remote control.
So what's the better play? Because people here don't chase, and they think it means being cold.
It's not about being cold. It's about being steady. You acknowledge it once, calmly. Something like, I can tell you're distant. I'm open to talking when you're ready. And then you stop performing. You do not apologize for things you don't believe were wrong. You keep your routine. You keep your self-respect. Then one of two things happens. Either she re-engages in a healthier way, with more respect and direct communication. Or she stays gone, which reveals that she wasn't offering the kind of partnership you want anyway. Both outcomes are information. Both outcomes protect you.
So it's not win her back at all costs. It's hold your center and see what's real.
That's it. When a man values peace as much as connection, he becomes very hard to manipulate. And honestly, that's not just attractive, it's healthy. Because the goal isn't to dominate the relationship. The goal is to have a relationship where neither person has to use pressure tactics to be heard.
Dr. Wania Prince, this was powerful. Not just the labels, but the clarity. Thanks for coming on and walking us through it.
Thanks, Dave. And to anyone listening, don't confuse silence with strength. The real strength is communicating clearly and respecting yourself enough not to chase what's being withheld.
That's today's episode of The Mind Game. If you know someone stuck in that loop of overthinking and over-apologizing, send this their way. And as always, stay sharp, stay grounded, and protect your peace.